Digital Dissection, a nerd podcast, can at times contain adult language and themes. It is not intended for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Digital Dissection podcast, where we take a closer and possibly unnecessary look at our favorite properties, creators, and topics. We are your humble hosts, Joe and Mark, two pop culture nerds dedicated to telling entertainment history before it's forgotten too soon. Join us on Facebook, Twitter, and our blog for more information on the show. We also love to hear from you, so why not write us at digitaldissectionpodcast@gmail.com. And now that we've got that out of the way, let's get to dissecting.
Joe, how does it feel going back and looking at properties that are at least 25 years old?
It is basically straddling a fine line between nostalgia and very, very aware of being very aware of my mortality. And that's where we like to thrive. Is you don't you're happy about it, and then you realize, oh man, that was 20 years ago. Ooh. Ooh, but then we hit you with more nostalgia, so it's fine.
It is kind of a vein that we've tapped into specifically this season because, in season 1 of this show, we actually did mix in like some current things or current-ish things, and then we kind of settled into that like little, hey, this stuff is older than, 5 minutes ago.
Yes.
Like we're reliving our lives in a way. But this season, we really banked hard into that. So
we really did. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so now we're back.
And we're going to lean even further into that because this is definitely where we're going to go into a very, very solid piece of my childhood. And it basically, I think this is, I'm trying to remember like when this show aired, if it was specifically a Saturday morning thing or if this was a after school scenario, because we are today looking at the original Pokemon anime, Season 1 of the Indigo League. Or I guess not of the Indigo League. Indigo League is Season 1.
Yeah.
Because then we get into the weird Orange Island League thing after that. But we're not going to touch on that today.
That was the specific like island chain that was made that had nothing to do with the games, right? Like that was just
nowhere.
Gotcha. That was like an original joint. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, you know what? For the Indigo League, I did not watch this in real time or as it came out. I had nothing to do with Pokemon in this era of my life. So for the majority of this, I saw maybe a stray episode here and there. There was no consistent following for me at this stage in life. I had to discover it later, Joe, as a lot of people did with Pokemon Go. That's when I started consuming the majority of my Pokemon-related things, was right around that time.
Yeah, that's fair. Like, I know like the handheld stuff did not definitely grip everyone. It's very simplistic RPG style, is fun in itself, but then the story from game to game is pretty repetitive. You have like basically the same setup as you go from game to game. You're going to be in your region. There are 8 more badges. There's an Elite Four. You get a rival that you get to name. If you don't name him something like Dickbag, you're doing it wrong because they never check that. My dude is like, it's become the consistent now. That's what I name all of my characters in current playthroughs because there's nothing more chill than someone calling Link my dude in The Legend of Zelda.
Oh, yeah.
As you progress through things. Ah, my dude, you've arrived. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I have. So, and now we get to the point of a franchise where the video game is successful enough. I believe it also has a successful manga at this point. So the next natural step is anime. And you've got to make this thing into a cartoon and get something else for the young minds to consume. So we have the birth of the Indigo League season.
Yeah, which a lot of people didn't even realize. The original, like the Japan-only version of this show, it came out in 97. So it was before the West had really adopted Pokemon as this, culture-breaking IP that kids were going nuts about, and everyone wanted to associate with Satan if you're one of the parents that freaked out. It's like, how is Pokemon satanic outside of in the video games?
I think if you don't understand it and you are a middle-aged, God-fearing brother of Christ, you just assume that it's satanic because you don't get it. And I think that's where it mostly comes from. Because, like, to my knowledge, like, there's no, like witchcraft. There's no worshipping of any sort. Yeah, they're monsters technically, but, like, they're usually adorable. So I don't get it. I have no idea how this became satanic.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the fact that it was not successful yet, like widespread, is the reason why I think this show, at least in this season, was as successful as it was. And we'll get into some of the reasons as to why. But this isn't just us saying this. There's actually quite a few folks out there that say that this is regarded as one of the best seasons of Pokemon as an anime or whatever, cartoon, whatever you want to call it. And even on Rotten Tomatoes, which we've referenced a few times this season, there's no way for critics to really go at this one since it's not like a movie or anything. Yeah. But the fans agree that 84% of them thought that this was a, certified fresh property. So
yes. And that's saying something because this is a pretty successful like anime in general. There are over 1,200 episodes at this point. With God knows how many. I don't know how many movies they've had either. Like, I feel like there's at least a movie or two a season these days. And it's typically surrounds a legendary Pokemon for the region that the anime is currently in. I honestly haven't seen movies past Pokemon 2000. But one thing I will happily show you that relates to the Indigo League is this bad boy that I still have. So if you're listening to this and not watching the YouTube program, I'm holding up a original copy of the Pokemon To Be a Master soundtrack.
Oh my god.
And the CD is still in there, and you can see they did the right thing by making it look like a Pokeball.
Yes. That is fantastic.
Yep, this is pretty great. Which does include the two songs that appear in basically every episode. Well, one that appears in every episode, and the other is basically culminated or put together by watching several episodes. So you get the Pokemon theme song, which I'm just going to put out there. That's the theme of our generation, Mark. Even if you weren't there to really listen to it while it was new, you can listen to it now and be like, fuck, this is good. The only thing it needs is DMX. And YouTube has the solution to that.
So, I was going to say, there's no way that I would talk about this season of Pokemon without specifically mentioning the theme song, because you and I have talked about this before, how, with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, they had that intro theme that kids would listen to this and go, holy shit, what is happening right now?
How do they make a song that just rises the whole way and never slows down?
Yes, they did. And honestly, same thing goes for the Pokemon, main theme song for this show. Like it is absolutely insane. The first time I heard it when I was a kid, it was great. But like I mentioned to you, I didn't really watch this show religiously or anything. And then when I was an adult and I heard the song again after it being dormant for like maybe 15 years from my memory, all of a sudden I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, what was I doing? This song's amazing.
Yeah, it's like I have to get out and run or something. Like, I can't just sit here. Like, it's definitely, I feel like, especially like when it comes to cartoons here in the West, like the art of the theme song, I feel like it's dead. You just kind of want to quickly get into whatever it is you're watching. So it'll be like, honestly, something that's like 15 seconds, such a quick bit of action, title flashes, and boom, you're into the cartoon. Which, I mean, I feel like it's robbing us because, one, like the episodes aren't going to be any longer. It's just more time for commercials. So there's that. Yeah. But on top of that, that doesn't get you excited for the show like this used to, because when you got that initial like little drum like beat that rose as it went on, like you just I want to be the very best. It just, like, yeah, I am ready to fucking watch Pokemon now. Like,
Yes.
unbelievably ready to watch Pokemon. So when you
Yes.
had the show starting off like this, it almost didn't matter what happened in the rest of the episode because you were hooked and you were sold. Even if the episode was terrible, which, I mean, in a 82 episode season, like, you're gonna have some misses here and there. And
Oh, yeah.
you still watched the whole way through because the theme song got you excited to watch it regardless.
Dude, hey, like I said to you before, I rewatched this whole thing because of Pokemon Go. Like, I went back and started watching it all again, and I did never once skip the intro to this cartoon. And so Jason Page, who actually sung the main theme, when Pokemon Go came out and everybody was going nuts, he actually came back and redid the song. Like, he re-recorded it as an older man, and all of a sudden people are seeing this again, and they're like doing the duet stuff with it on social media, and people are like crying, and there's even like a big gathering of players who are sitting there and just like singing the duet with him. So I mean, this song is definitely a table setter, and yeah, dude, it shook the fuck out of me the first time I heard it. It's like, oh my god, like, did they know what they were doing at this point? I have to think they did.
I think they did because, like, especially when you look at taking it from the initial, like, the original Japanese to, like, the United States, because a lot of, from my understanding, and I might be getting a little bit of this wrong, but a good chunk of that theme song is really in the original Japanese, like, what you're seeing is what they're singing about in the original Japanese version of the opening theme song. So like, you're getting, especially that there's like the kind of like towards the end of the song, you've got Pikachu like running towards the camera, and he like goes past the 3 main evolution starters. He goes like through the legs of some unnamed female trainer, and then eventually jumps onto Ash. During that time, like the original, like in the original theme song in Japan, they're singing about Pikachu doing that, like going from spot to spot and then getting to the trainer. So when it got to like the United States, like, well, they're not gonna. I don't think the kids are going to enjoy just us singing about what we're seeing on the screen. We've got to tweak that just a little bit for the localization, and this is one of those times where that was the absolute right decision.
Oh, I was going to say that. So basically, Drax is singing the intro to the show. If they're singing everything literally.
To my understanding, and I mean, I don't think the whole thing's literally, because I mean, I think a lot of it's classical, like, not classical, but like very traditional, like Japanese, like themes throughout a song. So there's lots of like love, happiness, and looking towards the future, like themes in like a lot of things. Or, you know, it could be like completely about depression, but it's really upbeat. So the Western audience has no idea what's going on. But that wasn't the case in the Pokemon theme song. But yeah, a good chunk of it was them just singing about what's going on the screen.
I was going to say, how sad must that have been? It's like, you know, Lapras with someone on its back, Pikachu on a Pidgeot riding into the sky.
Gosh. Which, small interlude from a meme I recently saw on the internet was there was some young player who read the original Pokédex description for Lapras, and it talked about how, due to hunting, they were brought to the brink of extinction, and there were a few of them left. And he found this out, and eventually, when you could actually breed Pokemon in Generation 2, he would just start breeding Lapras and releasing it, because in his little mind, it was repopulating Lapras into the wild. And then it's much, much later on, I don't remember what generation. It's probably after 5. The Lapras Pokédex updates to how they rebounded due to conservation efforts. So
That's
I can
great.
think of it was that kid. It was him or her. I don't know who it was, but yeah, you go, kid.
Well, actually, you know what? Since we love segues, that's a really good thing to kind of cut into here, is talking about the kid at the center of this show, who would be Mr. Ash Ketchum. And I've always kind of wondered about Ash Ketchum. The big thing is, I've always wondered how people actually liked Ash Ketchum growing up and as an adult. Because he's an interesting character. Now, part of this I will give some credit to, because as we've mentioned on some other anime before, when there is a localization effort and things get translated, some of the characters get lost, some of the dialogue gets lost, and so initially Ash Ketchum was actually confident in the original dub, or whatever you want to call it, and that's kind of what fueled him. It was like, yeah, I'm confident about this. I'm courageous enough to jump into this, as opposed to the English dub that made him more arrogant and like so self-sure of himself for a 10-year-old.
Yeah, I would say he's still confident. He's stupid, but he is confident.
Yeah. He's like, hey, let me take the first 7 Pokemon out of the decks here, and let me go and fight every legendary I can get in front of. I mean, he seriously just tried to do everything he could, man. He used the entire cow when it came to those early stage Pokemon.
Oh yeah, I mean that he consistent. I mean, the fact that he, even if you look at the fact that he's had Pikachu since forever, and he's gone through so many regions, you'd assume that Pikachu has to be maxed out. Like, we'll assume that is a level 100 Pikachu. As far as things are concerned in the video game, that's still pretty worthless. They have like absolute shit for defense. They don't have much for attack. Special attack is okay. Special defense, probably worse than the other defense. Like, they're not great. And here he is, like, just fucking throwing it like Ho-Oh, which Ho-Oh is a flying Pokemon. You would think, okay, you know what, there's at least some weakness there. Ho-Oh doesn't give a shit. He doesn't care.
No.
Yeah, I'm weak to electricity, but you're still a Pikachu. And Ash is like, nope, go get it. It's basically a god. Go take care of it, Pikachu. And it goes to looking at season 1, and again, really looking at like how much I did not like Ash Ketchum growing up, because like in the video game, like you get red, or in the manga you get red, unless you do like the Electric Tail of Pikachu, then that is actually Ash. And Red is an actual successful trainer in that he knows what the hell he's doing, and Ash doesn't really do that well. But at the same time, I do get, like, from an anime standpoint, how that works well, because then you can have Ash learn with the audience. So he's not going to know it all. He learns with you instead of teaching you how necessarily. So there is that. But still, like, me, like, having, like, played the video game, obviously, first before watching like the anime, I'm just like, you know what? He's not good at his job. Ash is not a great trainer. And you can even kind of get some evidence to that with not only like how he battles and the moves he chooses, but the fact that like his best Pokemon doesn't like him until like season 3 of the show. So,
well, I mean, there's some trust building along the way. I mean, they do like each other, quite a bit more. But ultimately, what kind of kicks this thing off is that Ash he's a newly minted 10-year-old, and he's ready. He's ready to evolve into, it's essentially cockfighting with very colorful looking monsters. And so his mother kicks him out and goes, yep, go out there and get yourself your starter Pokemon, and let's get this legacy building. And so when you mentioned rivals in the game, in the game, isn't it like red and blue, and like you guys are kind of talking shit, like mad shit on each other the entire time?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that takes form in Gary Oak, who is the grandson of Professor Oak, right?
You mispronounced his name.
Oh.
His name is Gary fucking Oak. That's how you pronounce his name, because he, honestly, a highlight character of this first season.
Oh, he's such a dick in every possible way. Yeah, like no matter what, no matter what Ash does, Gary is always ahead of him in every single thing, and it is hilarious.
Ahead of him with a gang of like groupies, like as well, that are just following him everywhere, like dressed as cheerleaders or doing whatever it is that they need to support Gary Oak and his drive to win.
Yeah, they're like holding up the the championship belts as he's walking around. I mean, it is funny though, because it's not explained. Like, it's never explained how this dude just happens to have like thousands of people following him everywhere he goes, and it's like, what does he have time for? But yes, it is one of those things that I always laughed at when I was a kid and as an adult. It's like, this is to the point of like 80s level, rivalry madness.
Yeah.
And so yeah, Gary Oak was the perfect asshole, I think.
Yep. And it's interesting that they chose to. I mean, again, like maybe I can't speak for certainty on like the original like Japanese script, but the way they portray Gary Oak in the dub is very much like you said, just an asshole. Like he's the kid that everyone hates on the playground, but also doesn't understand why girls like him. Like that's kind of where Gary Oak exists as a character. And typically, like in the Pokemon games, like your rival will have a bit of jarring back and forth, like, "Oh, smell you later. I'm ahead of you, like always." But at the same time, like sometimes they'll give you items to get you going, or they will also say, "Hey, you're getting pretty strong. That's awesome, dude. Keep it up. I'm still gonna be better than you." And then they'll take off. Like it's clearly like within like the limited small amount of text space they can give you, they imply that while this person is trying to beat you, they are still at their core your friend and trying to just kind of like push you to be better by them being better themselves. Do you get that feeling from Gary Oak at all in the show?
No. The way I look at it, when you have very close friends who make fun of you and talk mad shit on you, it's because of the relationship and not because of an actual personal belief. Whereas Gary Oak talks to you that way with none of the friendship and just the sass and just the just the line stepping. I mean, he's awful. He is absolutely awful. He's
a habitual line stepper, if there ever existed to be such a thing.
He reminds me of every like colonel or general's kid that I met when I was moving around in the army. And you're like, who the fuck are you? It's like, what, you overheard your dad talking long distance to some dude about operations, and suddenly you fucking think you can go lead lead the military. It's like, fuck, who the fuck are you?
Yeah.
Gary Oak is absolutely that. And here's the thing, Ash is like he's all ready to go. He's got his backpack, he's walking down there to get his starter Pokemon, and Gary's like, "Ooh, they ran out. There's no more Pokemon." And you're just like, fuck you, man.
Which I maybe I'm remembering wrong. Didn't Ash actually like wake up late in the first episode? In that episode, because he was ready the night before, but something happens and he wakes up late because I'm pretty sure doesn't he rush over there in his pajamas?
Yeah, I think that actually does sound right. I mean, either way, I just know he doesn't get there in time.
No, he does not.
Which, here's the thing, like, okay, so there's obviously the three starters. You got your Bulbasaur, your Charmander, and your Squirtle.
One is the right choice all the time, by the way.
Yeah, but I mean, out of all the new kids that are 10 years old on that day, what happens if you just happen to miss one of those three? Like, are you just constantly fucked over if you I mean, what happens?
I'm guessing you just have to wait till next year, which is kind of weird because, like, in this, I mean, one thing that's always baffled me in Pokemon is the starter Pokemon themselves, because they're supposedly given out to every child, like most children in like the given region that you're in. So you would think, okay, well, if they're given out to most of the children, these they have to be somewhat common.
Yeah, right.
But they never are.
I know.
They're like the only ones you can find in the game, and you have to trade for the other starters to get them. Yeah. So I guess that does mean that, like, hey, you have to wait till next year, and we can finally find like one more of each of these fuckers somewhere. So yeah, maybe that's just what happens to most kids. Or in Ash's case, there is a fourth option. There's a Curtain 4. However, Curtain 4 is an asshole.
I would think, sassy is like the best way to describe.
Probably a better way to do it, yeah.
Yeah. Pikachu is basically like a cat in a live segment on the news. You just can't expect him to ever do what you want him to do. And it is a wonderful way to start off this whole thing, because he immediately electrocutes Ash before they even leave the building. As an adult, I absolutely appreciate it, because I'm like, yeah, I'm about to have kids, and I've worked with a lot of cats, and this is what that feels like.
Yes.
Never knowing what's going to happen next.
Yep.
Yeah. And honestly, Pikachu as a starter, what I thought was really funny about this was in Pokemon Go, they did the same thing. You have your three starters that you can potentially work with, But if you actually like walk away from the starters when you're supposed to select them, if you walk far enough away, you can actually pick Pikachu as your starter, right? And before that point, I mean, that wasn't you couldn't do that in the actual games, right? I don't think you could actually
No.
trigger that.
The only time that you get something like that is you get after the success of the anime, they basically re-released the original game as Pokemon Yellow, and this time, just like Ash, your character wakes up too late. The three starter Pokemon have already been picked, but Pikachu is there. So, and this is also the first time where you get to have like a Pokemon walking around outside of its Pokeball following you around. So that was really cool that you could have Pikachu walking around with you. And then very similar to like the anime, you do eventually obtain the three starters. So that's also pretty nice that you can actually have all three with you as opposed to having to trade for them. So yeah, that was the kind of the only case where you get the fourth option, even though technically it's not optional. You have to take the fourth option
Yeah.
because they're all gone. So looking at where we are now in the series, establishing the main characters for who we basically follow for season one. We've got our basically our main dude Ash and Pikachu, and then we've established the rival in Gary fucking Oak. Ash's mom is there, but she's like in and out of the show. Like every like 10 episodes, like Ash calls home. So it's kind of there. But Professor Oak, who, like we said before, is the grandfather to Gary Oak and is the regional expert on Pokemon, hanging out, possibly
Could you?
sleeping with your mother.
I was gonna say yes, yes. Like, because when you mentioned that he calls Professor Oak, and then it's like, yeah, I need to call my mom. You know, after you call Professor Oak, and he's like, oh well, I just happened to be with your mom, and you're like, excuse me,
Excuse me? Would you
like
This is like I'm calling from a computer that's only in my mom's house. How did you just and it's in her bedroom. My God, man.
yeah, it's like you are filthy, Professor
Yeah.
Oak. You are filthy. I you know when people started talking about this, it wasn't initially either because no one was talking about whether or not Professor Oak was clapping cheeks with Ash Ketchum's mom. But years later, we all kind of went, this is highly suspicious that
Very.
he's always with her.
He's
Oh,
single.
man.
My dad is always out of the picture, which is a weird theme in Pokemon games as well.
Yeah, no,
Pretty much like all the time, the dad's never there.
yeah, Professor Oak is single and ready to wingle.
Yeah. So that's pretty great. Oh my God. Yep, I think I might have to add that to whatever dating app I'm using, Single and Lady Wingle, and whoever actually gets it.
Yeah,
I'm not going to say wife, but at least short-term girlfriend. So,
well, hey, before we get too far away from starters, though,
yeah.
one thing I wanted to mention about trivia from behind the scenes of this is that they did flirt with giving Ash a Clefairy instead of Pikachu, and this is one of those things now that we kind of go, this is really a thought process. They were concerned because they thought Clefairy would be too girly. And I'm like, have you ever been hit with Moonblast before? There is nothing quote unquote girly about getting hit by that move.
No. Moonblast ain't fucking around.
No, but either way, like that was one of those things I always thought was kind of interesting because we don't really tend to see like the fairy class stuff get featured a whole lot, like predominantly like in this series. And yeah,
And I mean, back then there wasn't even a fairy type. Clefairy was normal at the time.
That's true.
Being the thing, and I thought I even heard that like initially like they kind of were thinking of Clefairy being like the so cute this will be the face of the franchise, but Pikachu is what really took off.
yeah,
And they ended up changing their minds about that. But yeah. So those are the start. That's the starter situation. We've got Ash leaving town with Pikachu. We won't go like step by step, but we'll go touch on some key points because eventually Pikachu does get hurt through a Spearow incident, and he needs to be taken to the Poke Center as quickly as possible. When a young ginger girl bikes by, Ash asks to borrow her bike, quite abruptly takes it, ends up taking it off a sweet jump on accident, wrecks the bike, but gets Pikachu to safety, and we now actually have player 2. I guess player 3. We'll count Pikachu as the player 2 here. And it turns out to be none other than Misty, the Cerulean City gym leader. Is going to be basically the play for her. She has 2 reasons for following Ash around. The one that she is vocal about and leans on is that he owes her a bicycle because he destroyed hers. Eventually, she kind of falls for his twerpy charm that he seems to have. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
And she's also a very young teenager that somehow gets hit on by a lot of guys throughout their journey, which I always found troubling.
Yeah, very concerning. But also like the number of anime about teenage girls and them being
sexualized,
objectified and sexualized. Yeah, also concerning. But I don't know. It's
well, I
mean, thing apparently.
But I mean, on the other side of that spectrum, though, because as you mentioned, Misty being part of this group, this began the tradition of always having 2 companions alongside, Ash, and so you obviously go from, Misty, who is constantly pretty much talking shit to Ash about the bike. And then you basically have like the Hall of Fame of all horn dogs, Brock, joining, which I hope he wasn't like that in the original, but honestly, how could he not be with the way that was animated? Like, he's constantly macking on every single woman they come across.
And I think that actually is something that was how it was in the Japanese version as well.
It had to be.
It's like, yeah, he's definitely falling for every like woman that's there. That's roughly his age or older. Like, he is just in love instantly. It is quite comical. And then of course, like you get the trope of Misty is always physically beating him to knock him out, to drag him away from whoever he's now falling in love with. But yeah, that is our trio of humans that we get to follow around is Ash, Misty, and Brock. You get to hang out with a trainer and 2 gym leaders on their journey to get the rest of the badges.
Which I will say that to me was kind of cool because it's interesting that there's all this history kind of woven into them being gym leaders, and they establish it, and then we get away from it. Like they go, yep, they're gym leaders, they know their shit, and now it's just about Ash's journey. Like they do it, surprisingly, they do a good job about filling in quite a bit of detail for a kid's show behind these characters. I mean, you can just take any of the main characters that you run across quite a bit. They all have either a flashback or some kind of thing that helps, build up who they are. And you don't always get that in cartoons. I'm kind of surprised they did it.
No, yeah, and that's also kind of like the fun backstory of these 2. You've got Brock, who is one of like 9 children, and he is trying to support all of his brothers and sisters, and that's like why he's a gym leader for I think one of the largest reasons why he's a gym leader. And then you've got Misty, who I think is either I don't remember if they make her so she's the youngest of her sisters or if she's like the middle child of the sisters. But
I think she's the youngest of 4, isn't she?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And she's kind of always like vying for attention, and maybe not attention, but justification wouldn't be the right word either. But she's always trying to feel like she has to prove herself against her sisters. And that's part of her narrative that drives her forward as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that because really from an appearances standpoint, everybody likes to point towards, she dresses like a tomboy. And I go, I don't know anybody who is wearing suspenders and short shorts like that. But hey, that's what kind of popped up on all of the early commentary. It's like, oh yeah, she's a tomboy. And I go, no, she's not a tomboy. She is Misty. Like, just let that be for a while. And then you see her sisters, and her sisters have like these like long flowing gowns and like, perfect hair and all that shit. And it's like, no, she's not a tomboy. She just doesn't want to do that bullshit that they're doing up there.
She was a tomboy, and so was Daisy Duke. Yeah, with the crop top, short shorts, and suspenders. Yeah, definitely a tomboy.
Yeah. Joe, if we ever want to be tomboys, we know what to do. Just
Yes.
cut off those pants, let
I'm
the
gonna
pockets
take
hang
this
out,
shirt,
baby.
cut it right under the "Fight Me, Michael Rosenbaum" thing, and then boom, tomboy.
Yeah, see, you heard it here first. If you want to be a tomboy, just show a lot more skin. That's all you
Yep.
need to do. Yeah, I just this is the '90s in a nutshell.
Oh
People
my
just
God.
people thought they were being edgy by saying stupid shit, so that's what we get for that. But hey, speaking of people,
edgy.
yes,
I like that we were both on the same page, because one could say that we took that idea and we made it double, because
Yes.
it is time to talk about, honestly, quite probably my favorite part of this show, and that's Team Rocket.
oh,
Because they're the villains of the overall story, but they are also not really great at being villains, but they're entertaining.
I was gonna say there's an asterisk on the end of that because
Yeah.
the Team Rocket people that we're introduced to initially aren't the greatest at being Team Rocket people, which would be Jesse, James, and Meowth, their trusty cat. But we do end up eventually meeting pretty damn good Team Rocket people. And I think what's interesting about this is that for those of you who haven't played Pokemon, or maybe you just don't know a whole lot about things outside of maybe the mobile game, whatever, like the Team Rocket people are very much evil. You know, they're not good folks. You know, they're not like they're not like the maintenance people in the Death Star. They're just doing their 9 to 5 and then clocking out. You know, like these are people who are, you know, kidnapping, potentially eating, you know, doing horrible shit to Pokemon. And so when you look at Jesse and James, for like the first few episodes, Joe, they're actually still somewhat malevolent. You know, they're actually bad people for the most part. But then after like 10 or 15 episodes, they are complete like comedic. It's just a
100%.
complete joke.
Although I do have to say, for them supposedly supposed to be malevolent, bad people, if you take a look at like what they say every time you find out that it's Team Rocket,
Yes.
their little Team Rocket motto, their Team Rocket motto, not that bad. It doesn't make them sound like, no, I think prepare for trouble, make it double, to protect the world from devastation. That's a good thing. To unite all peoples within our nation. Also,
Yes.
unless it's a weird culty thing, that should be a good thing because they're welcoming everyone in. And then to denounce the evils of truth and love, that's pretty great. Extend our reach to the stars above. Hey, we're exploring. Like, their overall little motto thing, it doesn't make them sound like they're alpha people. But they are also trying to steal Pokemon pretty much every single time you see them. That is bad.
And then, but that's when you find out, like later on, that they are saying the motto incorrectly the entire time. Because when the other Team Rocket people show up, all of a sudden you're like, whoa, hold on a second. You are actually saying bad things to me right now in your motto, and I am actually scared now. You know,
Because isn't it? I'm trying to think. Because it's not. God, is it Johto or the Orange Islands where you get Butch and Cassidy show up?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which
Butch and
also
Cassidy.
great.
Yeah.
Playing on the whole outlaw thing, Jesse and James and Butch Cassidy.
Yeah.
Pretty fun.
Yeah.
But yeah. It turns out they were saying it wrong the whole time.
Yes, literally the entire time. Which
But-
for me, when since I wasn't a kid watching it, once again, more of an adult watching this. When I finally noticed that, I was like, "Wait a second, these guys were like fucking stupid the entire time."
Yeah.
Like,
the whole time.
and like they're somehow smart enough to operate a hot balloon or hot air balloon, all across this continent. They somehow managed to get all these disguises. They managed to get behind the scenes of like every production. They infiltrate the government, local businesses, but for some reason they can't remember their motto.
Yep.
Come on, man.
They're basically the Wile E. Coyotes of the series, always going after the Roadrunner and always failing miserably every time.
Yes.
And one may ask, guys, we just pointed out Pikachu not that strong of a Pokemon, not that great. Why are they always trying to go after the Pikachu? Because even if like we didn't mention that they're always going after Pikachu, but if you've heard anything about the series, you've seen it before a little bit, you know that they're trying to steal Pikachu. That's why they're always hounding Ash. Well, as it turns out, one of the things that did happen to Ash's Pikachu is it was hurt so bad that they actually had to like hook up an entire power plant to it, which ended up supercharging Ash's Pikachu. So his is actually pretty strong.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I digress. So that's their whole goal is to capture Pikachu. But I mean that's their surface level thing, and obviously they keep blasting off again. They're flying off in the end. But again, like we talked about how this series did take care to establish backstories for each of these characters to make you enjoy them. I don't remember Jessie's backstory being put into season 1. I think you get hers further down the line, but you do get James and Meowth in the season 1 because their Meowth also pretty special. While he's not the strongest Meowth, he does speak English, which I think in the show, like the show's history, it's basically only legendary Pokemon find ways to speak English, and then there's Meowth who can speak English. And you found out the whole reason he did that was because he fell in love with another Meowth who was abused by her trainer, and he did this to impress her, and she ditched him anyway for something else.
Yes.
So,
yeah, that's some
sad Meowth story.
There's some deep cuts in this series, though. I mean, and it's not just some of the backstories. I mean, it's also with the Pokemon that Ash comes across too, because his whole journey is on foot or occasionally bicycle, or if he's being chased by Officer Jenny. But in these little like on foot explorations, though, he does get into some interesting characters. You know, he sees Pokemon out in the wild. You know, all the stuff that pretty much mimics what your experience would be in the video game, right? Yeah. So I thought that was actually kind of cool, even though for an anime, you know me, Joe, I don't subscribe to anime necessarily. The content actually has to interest me. But for this series, though, like I was riding that wave of Pokemon Go enthusiasm, there's a lot of interesting moments that just kind of happen as they travel. Now, a lot of people usually point towards some of the gut-wrenching ones, which is when he discovers his Charmander for the first time. And to this day, it is still some of the most depressing animation I think I've ever seen. So if you're not familiar with Pokemon, okay, the Charmander is this orange lizard. He's got whatever you want to call it. He's got a little flame on his tail, and if that flame goes out, the animal dies. The Pokemon dies. So the first time you see Ash's Charmander, he's in a rainstorm, abandoned by his trainer, and he's covered up by what's like a loincloth or a napkin or something. And he refuses to move because he's so depressed.
Like, I think press off like he's waiting for his trainer to actually come back for him, even though he was abandoned.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And this was early on. This isn't like, halfway through the season or something. This is
episode 11, by the way.
Yeah. You're watching this, and like as a kid, I didn't see it as a kid. As an adult, I saw it, and I went, "What the fuck? This is depressing." You put this in front of children? Why? Why would you do this to me?
I mean, it's not quite Grave of the Fireflies depressing, because few things are Grave of the Fireflies depressing. But yeah, it is very, very, very hard to watch for that, because like this is something where like the Charmander evolution tail thing is a little open to interpretation, because what it says in the Pokedex entry is that like the like how like furious or how much that little tear fire is burning, that's a measurement of its life and how healthy it is. Yeah. So from there, like you can take it as, okay, so if it's low or goes out, the animal's going to die. And that's what they play off of very much in this episode, is that, well, the rain's going to put the fire out, that's going to kill the Charmander, because that fire has to stay burning. But then, like, later on in the series, when eventually that little guy grows up to be a Charizard, like, he gets thrown in entire bodies of water for extended periods of time and gets out just fine. So it's like, well, that should have just put out the fire at the end of his tail, but it just doesn't. So, but it is one of those things where, like, the show did that intentionally. Like they wanted you to make you feel sorry for the animals, because one thing that they do push heavily throughout the series is kind of how like trainers bond with their Pokemon, and it's more like it's this weird juxtaposition of like, yes, this is basically cockfighting with imaginary creatures, but at the same time they fight because supposedly they enjoy it, and the trainers all still very much care for the Pokemon, and that's part of like they know when to stop fighting so it doesn't go too far, you know, cause any serious injury. Take with that what you will, but it's definitely meant to show you and push more in that idea that like the trainers do very much care for the animals or the monsters that are hanging out with them.
And even though the translation may have been off a little bit with Ash as a character from Japanese to American audiences, his care for his Pokemon is like probably the biggest thing that is the focus of this, and which is why some of these situations even can lend to being so depressing, because for those of you who haven't seen it yet, there is a Pokemon called a Caterpie, which is like a little caterpillar, right? And it evolves into a butterfly, aka a Butterfree. And there's this entire saga with Ash and this little Caterpie. Now, the low point of this would be the Metapod, which is the middle evolution, where he fights another trainer with a Metapod, and all they do is harden the entire fight. which for those of you who haven't seen it before, hardening isn't really a move. It's just standing still and just not moving and just upping defense. So the entire time this fight is going on, they're trying to make it look as like epic as it can, but it's just a Metapod staring up at the sky, and it just like pans on it. And it's like, this is entertainment.
It's brilliant. It's hilarious, because this is like, this is one of the times where the show gets something wrong based off how the things work with the game, but it does it wrong and you don't care because it's funny. Because like Metapods that were caught wild won't know anything but harden. But if you start with the Caterpie and evolved it, it keeps the Caterpie moves that it already had. So Ash's Pokemon should be able to attack, but it's so funny you don't care anyway.
No. Instead, you're just watching it get hard as it can. And the reason why we didn't want to go through step for step on these things is because this saga gets very depressing. Like there's a couple different turns that it takes after this point, and as an adult, they played this like original music at the end of it when shit's going down. And I said, I can't watch any more of these right now. This is so fucking depressing and sad. I can't continue. I mean, and Ash is like bawling his eyes out. I'm sitting there going, damn it, I want to drink right now. Like this is so bad. This is so sad to me.
Yeah.
But they managed to do that as a kid show.
Yeah, I mean, they also do a good job of balancing things a little bit, because if we do look step back a little bit, we talked about like the Charmander episode where he was where he came with Ash. That was very sad. But the episodes surrounding that, because basically they did a fun little thing where Ash gets Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle in the order of their Pokédex number. So he got Bulbasaur first, then Charmander, and Charmander was really sad. Bulbasaur had this confidence thing, really sad, and then Squirtle in the fucking Squirtle Squad. And holy shit, has this forever changed the lives of me and some of my best friends. So if you recall, a former third host of this podcast, Chelsea, this is something that when we found out that we liked Pokemon, one of the first things we fucking talked about was the goddamn Squirtle Squad and how much we loved it. Like, you just can't... Like, the episode is so great because it basically turns the whole sadness thing on its head from Charmander, and instead Ash and everyone comes to this town. It turns out it's being basically, like... What am I going to say? I was not tortured, but... There's
terrorized.
A gang of... Terrorized. It's terrorized by a gang of Squirtles. And they all have sunglasses on. That's how you know they're bad, that they're little rebels, is they all have sunglasses on. And they go around just causing amok and mischief. And then one thing that also happens in this show, if you've never seen it before or have completely missed out on any any media containing Pokemon and you get to hear them is that in the show, the way most of them communicate is they just say their name.
Yeah.
So, like, some of them roar, some of them make sounds that aren't that, but most of them say their name, and Squirtle is fantastic because he's just like, Squirtle, 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 Squirt, 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 Squirt. He's like always on the verge of like pushing out a fart.
Yeah.
He's like, Squirtle, Squirtle, Squirtle. Like my friends, like Chelsea and our other roommates in college, like we just lost it. Like regaling the first time we'd seen the Squirtle Squad do something. It's to the point now where like we have this dorky thing amongst like me and my college friends where we will just stick Squirtle into any song we're listening to. So we'll be singing along, and then like for instance, like we have the whole resurgence of Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush, and I'll get to like, if I could make a deal with God and get him to swap our Squirtles.
Oh yeah,
and because you can trade them, you can trade the Squirtles.
Yeah,
so
why not?
It makes sense there. So we just throw Squirtle into any song where like you can. There's a 2-syllable spot you can just slip Squirtle right in. That's thanks to the Squirtle Squad and their mischief.
I still can't believe that this was such a unique part of this cartoon that it ended up making its way into Pokemon Go eventually.
Yeah.
And you would end up having your Squirtle with the sunglasses. I mean,
oh my God, Squirtle Community Day was a hoot.
Yeah, it's just it's hilarious to think this is where it started. Like this is where this came from, and there are quite a few things that happen in the Pokemon series that wouldn't happen and I say series as in the cartoon, that wouldn't happen in the game for almost like a decade with giant Pokemon, with the Gigantamax or whatever it's called. Like I always forget. Because in this series you have a ton of like massive Pokemon that appear, and at one point you have a Tentacruel that's literally like smashing, a metropolitan area, and they have to tuck it down from that ledge. Another point, you have like an Alakazam and a Gengar that are like literally duking it out, let them fight style, and not only do these massive Pokemon, they're never mentioned again. Some of them are actually like evil too, like they're just bad Pokemon, and they never come back to that idea.
No.
Yeah,
and like I know, like I've made some criticisms of the series with Ash being an idiot and like them getting a few things wrong compared to the video games and being like a weird little like nerdy like hipster snob. But one thing that I did find out later in life that actually made me mad when I watched the show, because I thought it got it wrong, and it did get it wrong according to the games, is that when Ash goes to fight Sabrina, the psychic gym leader, he basically, I think the first time he goes, like he gets his ass handed to him, like he can't beat him.
Yes.
So he's told to go get a ghost Pokemon from Lavender Town so that he can beat the psychic gym. And for all of my fellow trainers who have been playing since the first generation, immediately there was nerd rage. You're like, no,
Yeah.
like Ghost is weak to psychic, you idiot. Like, why, like, one, someone gave you bad advice, and now you're going to listen to the bad advice, and it just happens to work in the show. That's stupid. It's dumb. But it turns out it was actually correct, and it was the game that got it wrong. Because the whole reason that Psychic was such a tank in Generation 1, and was like the ultimate thing, was completely on a coding accident.
Yes.
Because it wasn't weak to anything in the first generation, and it was supposed to be weak to Ghost because they didn't want to have one superior type over everything. So someone fucked up and accidentally made it so Ghost was weak to Psychic instead of Psychic being weak to Ghost, and they actually corrected it in the anime, which was something that I learned, I think, honestly, probably when I got to college. And I'm like, oh, hey, look at that. Good job, anime. Way to fix the thing that I thought you had gotten wrong, amongst other things. Boom.
Yeah.
Anime 1, games 500. So, good job, anime.
Yeah, now that you mention it too, Joe, stuff that appeared in the anime that didn't appear in the games. One of those things is the Mystery of the Lighthouse episode, where you literally get like a skyscraper-sized Dragonite. And I remember I did see this one as a kid, and then again as an adult. I can't believe how creepy that episode was.
Isn't it?
It is.
I mean,
seriously,
it's like borderline Cthulhu creepy.
yeah.
It's like, oh, it's glaring eyes. Like, what does it know that is it the infinite vastness of existence that makes me feel insignificant and therefore want to lose my mind? Don't look at me, Dragonite. I don't know what you're going to do next.
Yeah, I don't know what you're here for. I have no
knows.
idea. All I know is that there's these very bright white eyes in the distance in the fog, and you're literally like 200 feet tall, and you're walking towards me, and it's just like shrieking into the into the void, and I still can't believe how creepy that is, because one of the things that I asked myself in hindsight, and also wrote in the notes for this show that Joe and I are both looking at now, is that was this show darker than anyone remembers? And I think it is one of the darkest, like this first season is probably one of the darkest kid shows I've ever seen, because they hadn't toned it down. They didn't know that it was going to be as popular as it was. So it still kind of had this spiritual, maybe more Japanese inspired, type of content. And so when I look back at it, I go, yeah, there are definitely some anime things that I will go, yeah, okay, that's kind of corny, and it's 1996, I'm going to let it pass. But some of these other standalone moments like that, I mean, just that imagery of this massive creature in the fog, and I don't know what it wants.
Yeah.
As a kid, I was terrified. As an adult, also terrified.
Because I mean, also like think of like just like the noises it makes. Like we said, a lot of Pokemon just say their names, but it wasn't like he was out there going like Dragonite, because that would have just killed it. Like you'd have instantly like, nope, taken out. This is funny.
Yeah.
But he does kind of have like this like low, like not low pitch, but yeah, like this kind of haunting moan that it goes from a haunting moan to like a shrieking, and it is pretty darn creepy. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if it walked up and it was just like, hello, it's me, Dragonite, in the darkness. How are you, sir? I'm just hungry. Be like, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's not going to be scary.
I'm here to talk to you about your car's extended warranty. And just, he's like, oh, he's here again. He's a nuisance. He's not scary.
They always know how to get you.
Yeah, they do.
But seriously though, like this is a chain of several episodes where things just get creepy. And there's another one. This is one that makes like almost every top 10 list, is the Ghost of Maiden's Peak, when you have this rogue Ghastly, just this little orb of a ghost that can actually talk, like you mentioned. It's one of the few that can actually speak. And then it possesses people throughout the episode. And I mean, it takes our friend Brock, and it takes control of him. I mean, it's, as a kid's show, some of that stuff is a little more graduated, I would say, compared to the other shows at the time, on TV. Like, for example, I would say the only other cartoon that I can think of as creepy would have been Extreme Ghostbusters, which we covered a few episodes back. So there weren't a lot of cartoons doing this kind of thing at this point in time. Yeah.
No, especially like not here in the States. I mean, looking at the time this came on and made it to the States, like I said, Extreme Ghostbusters was the only thing that was creepy. And before that, it was the real Ghostbusters. And one of the reasons that ended up like the way it did, between completely shifting tone to Slimer and the real Ghostbusters to eventually going off the air, is because they basically found like, kids don't want to be scared on Saturday morning anymore. Like that's not like the thing they want. They want to wake up and be afraid. So we're going to change tone that eventually just gets canceled. So this was again like at least as far as like, Western and especially TV in the United States, something that had been absent for quite some time, is this pretty creepy mood that came through several episodes of the show.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know, I wasn't in the room with the producers, but from everything that I kind of looked up in hindsight, or people talking about the tonal shift that did happen, they were all saying that, this must have happened because of the popularity of the show, and they knew that it was way too creepy, and so they toned it way down, as you talked about in the next season. You've got a completely more original, idea attached to that. So it's a totally different experience. But as we kind of wrap things up here, Joe, in the same spirit that the Pokemon episodes would wrap up, there's a very unique way they did that. And do you remember, Joe, what exactly that was?
How could you forget? Because what this show did that was great was that you got a banger of a theme song to start things off, and just in case the episode was a bit depressing or maybe was fun altogether, you got two options at the end. Most of the time you got what was called the PokeRap. And what it was two gentlemen rapping through the original 150 Pokemon Pokédex. And they kind of broke it up over the episode. So you didn't get the full thing right away. You'd get like a chunk of Pokemon. It'd last maybe not even a minute, like probably 15 to 20 seconds of just like the song. And it was catchy, it was upbeat, it was fun. And if you want to listen to the whole thing, simply YouTube or find your copy of To Be a Master, the Pokemon album. Because what you also got is, if it was not a PokeRap episode, you had what was called Pikachu's Jukebox. And it was one of the other songs off of this album. And you got like a small, 20-second sneak peek of everything. And may I add, full of bangers, this whole thing. Some of them will capture the whole sadness of the series. There's one song that definitely brings you down when you hear it. But then you get Team Rocket's Rocket, and holy crap, that song will get you going. It'll move you. It's not baby making movement, but it will make you want to get up and be active.
Well, I don't know if my mind put up mental walls to kind of block out the Pokemon rap. Because I'd heard it as a kid for sure, and then when I heard it again as an adult, I was like, I thought this was fake. And then at the end of the first episode that I watched, when I had my Pokemon revival, all of a sudden I hear this guy just going, "You just do the singing, I'll take care of the hard part. Let's get it on." And I'm like, wait a second.
What's going on?
This actually existed. And so what I thought was cool about Pokemon Go coming back, we've mentioned it a few times, and it kind of uniting the world for a few weeks there. Well, what it also did was interest people in the Pokemon rap, because believe it or not, Joe, this was a piece of pop culture history that people had absolutely no knowledge of as to how it got made, or really any of the behind the scenes of it. It was just this thing that existed, and everyone's just kind of like, yeah, okay, it's here. Is there a story? I have no idea. Well, actually, a few years ago, right around the time Pokemon Go came out, they decided to do some journalists out there decided to research this. And so they tracked down all the names of the people. So the guy who's actually rapping, his name is Baby Floyd, and he's no longer with us. He passed away, unfortunately. So they couldn't ask him about about what he did. But someone who did survive was James D. Train Williams, who helped write some of the lyrics and produce the song. And then John Siegler, who was the music director for the show. And so they pretty much were referred over to Baby Floyd and D-Train to do this thing. They're going, who could we possibly get for a rap song for Pokemon and bring them together? And so these guys I don't know how they found them. They just said that, yep, somebody referred them over to us. We got brought into the studio. And so Siegler actually was the guy that helped write the main theme song as well for the show. He ends up having to figure out, how can we possibly make 150 Pokemon names rhyme together? So if that weren't hard enough, then they had to kick it over to Floyd and Williams and say, yeah, okay, so this stuff should rhyme, but you are still going to have to make this sound good. and
there's the kicker, isn't it?
I mean, I would just have to think that every single person involved in the production of this song was rolling their eyes the entire time. It's like, you can't rap to this. How can I rap to this? And then to try and go, okay, now I got to do an exercise where I take 150 different Pokemon and go, which ones rhyme the best with the other ones? Like, fuck me.
Oh my god.
Now
Yep.
we'll link this in the show notes because I don't want to ruin it. The actual transcript and the audio for that interview does exist, and we'll put it out there so you can listen to it. It's actually a crazy story. I mean, it is actually really cool to listen to. So just be on the lookout for that. It'll be there.
Yeah.
Oh man. So either way, I mean, I will say this as a parting thought for this program, Joe. I was not a huge Pokemon fan, as we've talked about before. Like, I was doing different things in the late 90s. I was playing computer games. You know, my N64 had no Pokemon-related things next to it. I didn't have handhelds, whatever. You know, so me only having seen a couple episodes of this as a kid, I had no appreciation for it then. I actually appreciated this more as an adult, going back to it, you know? And so I was actually really appreciative of what they tried to do with this show, given the fact that it wasn't this like massive property quite yet when they produced it. And then this is what they did when they were allowed to experiment. So I actually give it a lot of credit for a show that probably didn't know how long it was going to be around. Let's just get something out there and put some ideas together, but still be faithful to the lore of the game.
Yeah.
I mean,
basically, you're tasked with making a 24-minute ad for a video game.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing, and kudos to like the show for again doing as good of a job as it did. Opposite of Mark, I obviously, like you found out, I grew up watching the show. I watched it alongside me playing, fairly alongside me playing the game. I may have beaten it by the time the show came out, but like I watched the whole thing through, and even the points that like made me mad because like they got it wrong from the video game didn't turn me off from watching the whole show. I think I made it all the way to maybe the start of Johto Journeys before I decided to stop watching. Because at that point in time, I think I was in high school. I'm like, I should probably not be watching Pokemon. And making I shouldn't be watching Pokemon anymore. Still played it in secret, but did not watch it. But yeah, no, season 1 Indigo League is pretty legit. Other than, I guess
There's some
like
moments.
it did. There's some moments, yeah, and of course it does start the whole like basically trope that Ash is not a very good trainer because like he doesn't like. If you know anything about the series, like it wasn't until literally like a year or two ago that Ash finally won a regional league.
yes.
So, like, at the end of every game, you're supposed to beat the Pokemon League. It wasn't until season, like, what, 27? And that's me, of course, being facetious. It isn't until a very, very late season that Ash finally beats a regional league. So it's like, oh, okay, yep. And the way they end the one is very close to the manga, as far as things go. But, yeah, still fun. Like, I would definitely, if you want to kind of reminisce over like an older style like anime, like throw on Pokemon Indigo League. It will have definitely some moments where like, would I have watched this when I was a kid? Or like, I watched this when I was a kid. But there'll be plenty of others that are like, hey, yeah, I know why I watched this as a kid now.
Yeah, well, you know, I thought I did another good thing too, and I'll try to end on this, is that even though a lot of folks out there are competitive about sports or really any kind of competitions, one thing that this show did really well was that when people were competing with each other, they usually left as, like, I wouldn't say fans of each other, but they still supported each other, and they usually would still do the whole, good game. It's about sportsmanship.
Yep.
And so that was throughout too. Like that was throughout the series. But like it was really kind of shocking to see that as an adult and going, they actually made this like a positive influence for kids to like understand. Like it's important to support people even if you compete against them, which we found out with Ash and his doppelganger Richie later on. Yeah. He wears like same clothes. It's like, I don't know. But either way, that was really cool. That was really different and kind of shocking to me was that, in an age when like everybody's trying to do karate and they're, everyone's worried about, sweeping the leg, now we've got someone who is looking at this going, no, 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 no. You can support people that you compete with. And you can actually be happy for people who may end up beating you. You know, this is something that you need to know as a kid and as an adult. And so for a show like this to do that, I give it a lot of props for that.
Absolutely. And it's one that, again, I think it shows that, like you said, Marion, a very, very healthy form of competition, because as you said, Ash usually ends up almost most of the time friends with the people that he fights against, and it's again, even the ones he loses to. And what I think the show also does very well, on top of him always being a good sport, win or lose, is that Ash still very much emotionally reacts to winning and definitely losing, where Ash will take losses very, very hard. But again, it being a great show for kids shows that, yes, it's okay to have that emotional, tearing my heart out of I have my heart torn out of my chest because I worked so hard and I just lost, but still being able to congratulate the person who just out competed you, and how to process and work through, the heartbreak of losing something you've been training so long for. And that's something that is, one, very hard to teach children as experience as a basketball coach, getting young students to actually process a loss in a healthy way is very, very difficult. And that's something that I can definitely tip of the hat to the show for trying to do. Yep. And I think on that note, I think this is where we thank you all for listening to Digital Dissection, because as always, we always very much appreciate everything the Dissection crew does for us week after week. And your support does absolutely go a very long way. And if you happened upon this show by accident, please, please, please drop a review or comment on the show. We also really love hearing from our audience members, so feel free to message us over at digitaldissectionpodcast@gmail.com, where we welcome your ideas for future shows and tips for how to IV train your Pokemon, because it is a definite lost art in the modern Pokemon age if you've been playing the games all the way through. But, you can go ahead and discuss that as well as anything else that you'd like to discuss with us. And until next time, keep on dissecting.
In the meantime, we'll get more training.